Hello everyone, I'm Colin Kenneth. Today I'm doing something I've wanted to do for a long time. Today I'm doing 14 tips and tricks on using masking tape in the workshop. Now, in this mix, there's 3 or 4 of them that are kind of questionable, and I put them in anyway because if I don't, I'm going to get emails that people are going to say, oh, you forgot such and such. It's no, I didn't forget them. I didn't put them in because they're kind of not that great, but I'm putting them in anyway, and I'll talk about them when we get there. So let's get started. Before you get started today, there's 4 primary colors of masking tape. The purple color, you'll see that once in a while. That's for delicate work. We don't have any delicate work in the woodwork shop. You'll also see green, and green is a bit more of a temporary, and sometimes I've tried some of these off brands, and I've found them to be inconsistent. So now I'm sticking with the 3M products because I know what I'm getting, and I'm primarily using the yellow and the blue. The yellow is actually an indoor-outdoor masking tape. The blue is what I use consistently in my shop, and I just get good results from that. One of the main purposes for me of blue tape is to mark my face edges, and I've been doing this for I think 20 years now, and I'm seeing so many people on YouTube using blue tape to mark their face edges, and I think that's brilliant that people have adopted something that works really well. Now, I was taught a long time ago that that's how you mark face edges, but this is so much better. It's quicker, it's easier, and I can even transfer it to my tools. Here's my doweling jig, and I even put blue tape on it so that I know that face edge blue goes to blue. It's just quick and easy, and it works every time. This next trick is a substitute for using double-sided tape. And the way we do this, we put tape on 2 sides. So we're going to join these 2 boards together temporarily. So what we do is we put masking tape on both of these edges. Then we do something called burnishing it. And basically, I like to use a spoon to do this, but you can use any rounded object like this, and what that does is it sticks the glue or the tape even firmer to the wood. Then we put on a little bit of CA glue, and I'm just going to put a quick line on there like that. Then we spritz the other side with accelerator, and we put the 2 of them together, and it's an instant bond. And those are firmly put together, and they are almost impossible to pull apart. They hold very well, and I'm moving this like this, and I'm trying to break them like this, and they are hard to break. Finally, the masking tape can give way, but you need to put a lot of pressure in there. Perfect for situations where you don't have double-sided tape. In a lot of cases, this works even better. If you're making boxes, I often use masking tape as a clamp for the sides. If you're using picture frames, even large picture frames, masking tape can work wonders as a clamp, and it's very simple to use. You just lay it down like that, and you lay the parts out end to end like that. Put them so that they mount on each side, and I'm just going to carry on here and do this, and I'll show you at the roll-up what it looks like. And speaking of picture frames, here's another quick use. This is called templating. And if you take your masking tape, you notice it's got these funny little hooks here on each side. And if it's a picture frame, or even better, if it's a mirror, you can take your tape and move it over top of those 2, try that again there, over top of those 2 hooks, just like that. And now you can mark the center because there's a high point on each one of those. You can mark each one of them with a line, and now you can take that tape off and take it to your wall. And on your wall, you will have marked a level line across there, and now you can take that tape and mark, and there's where your 2 center lines are. Quick and easy, just like that. If you don't own a router, you can also cut slots in your material, for example, plywood, if you're making jigs or you need a slot for some reason for maybe a knob to go through. And the easiest way to do that is using a 7 1/4 inch blade. And I really like these Diablo blades because they're ultra thin. And that means when you're running wood through, there's not very much pressure on the wood at all. And there's very little sawdust as well because it's such a thin blade. All you need to do is mark the start and the stop, because where the blade comes out of the table saw deck is there, where it enters is there. So you need a distance between the start and the stop, and you'll also need a start and a stop on your material. And you can do a couple of things. You can drop the material down onto a blade that's spinning, and because you've got a way to hold it back here, you can prevent it from kicking back, and also because it's an ultra thin blade. The other way to do it, if you're not comfortable with that way, is to drop the blade right down, set your start and your stop at that blade, hold the material down, start the table saw, and run it through that way. Wait for your blade to stop, and there you go, a perfect straight slot. And if you need it wider, you can make another pass at that, and that way you can fit a bolt for a knob in there. Now, while we're at the table saw, the other trick that has little or no bearing, and I know that because I've run tests on it, is putting masking tape on the wood so that you don't get tear out. What most people make the mistake of doing is putting tape on top of their wood on the table saw. The table saw always makes the best cut on top. There's no point putting tape on top of wood on a table saw. Only people that do that don't understand how a table saw works. If you're going to put tape, the tear out on a table saw happens underneath, and that's where the tape needs to go. And I've done a whole video on this. It makes little or no difference at all putting tape. And seriously, when you think about it, how can you really expect something that's made out of paper and a little bit of glue to stop tear out? In fact, what we found in some cases, using the tape on there actually pulled fibers off the tape. So it really doesn't make much difference. And we'll do a quick run through here just so you can see. So there's the underside, and you can see there's no tape down here. And I'm going to take this further up, and we'll run the tape, and you see that there's really no difference. In fact, you can see it, if you look carefully, you can see as I'm pulling it off, it's actually pulling some of the fibers of the wood off with it, but it's really not making any difference. Here's a really good use for masking tape. If you're doing slots, cutting slots for something, maybe you're doing floating tenons or something like that, you can do a start and a stop, and you mark your wood, and it works as easy as this. I've got my bit installed in the router. And there you go. Get a nice clean slot, exactly the distance that you need. Now, I know many of you are making shelving and cupboards, and you're using plywood, and that's an excellent product for that kind of thing. But then you want to cover that plywood, and you want to put on some thin strips like this. In fact, gluing them on is an excellent way. But look, you don't need to buy expensive clamps. You can use tape. Tape works excellent for that. Again, you don't need tons and tons of pressure. You just need something that's going to hold it on there, stop it from moving around for even half an hour or so, and that will do that. It holds it down just perfectly, stops it from moving around, and now you've got You can put enough pressure on that tape that makes an excellent clamp. And here's one of the questionable uses of masking tape. I don't use it and I don't recommend it. I don't think it's a great use. It's use up a lot of tape when there's actually better methods. And the suggestion is that you run tape on both sides of the glue line, then you put it together, and the squeeze out is supposed to go on top of the glue. But honestly, whenever I've tried it, which is seldom, you just end up with a different kind of mess. So it's not one that I recommend. Now, while we're still with clamps, there is one good use for masking tape, and it doesn't use a lot of it, and that is to use a little bit. Bar clamps are particularly bad for black marks on the underside of the wood, and that's because most of these are iron, and the glue reacts with the iron and creates dark spots on the underside of your wood when you're gluing it together. And you don't need a lot there. It's just enough so that the glue can't touch the wood. Then you can glue your strips, put them on like that, and when you clamp everything up and the squeeze out comes down below, it goes on the masking tape rather than on the steel, and it saves you getting those black spots. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that a lot of my finishing products I put in glass jars, and I always label and date them so that I know how old they are. And when I do that, I can take off these labels and put on other labels. So these last really long. Both of them last for a long time, long enough that I have to peel them off. They don't peel off on themselves like I found with some of the green tape. Here's another questionable use for masking tape, and that's using it on wood, and even burnishing it doesn't work, and here's why. If you're using it with a dye or a stain and you want to have a nice sharp line, putting tape on there, the problem with tape is because this is a fluid, the finish will seep underneath the tape so that you can never get a nice fine finish, and it doesn't matter what you do. It's just almost impossible to get a nice clean line on wood when you're using a stain or a dye. And here's a trick that most people have seen somewhere, and that is using tape as a temporary stop for your drill. I have a wide variety of magnets for all sorts of different uses, and some of them are almost too powerful. And what I do with some of them, you can put a little bit of tape on. In fact, you can even put it on in a couple of layers, and it will lessen the strength of that, so you can actually adjust the strength of your magnets by putting a layer of tape underneath, and it works great. And if you want to change it up, you can do that by just removing a layer or two. Well, that concludes our video today on all sorts of tips and tricks for masking tape in the workshop. Could be one of our most valuable tools. And if there's something that I missed, send it in to me and I'll use it in one of my upcoming tips and tricks videos in the future. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.